we have a friend in the auto industry, and she has two daughters who are 18 and 19, and she said that it's likely that they will never own a car in their life, whereas most of us growing up, it was part of our self-identity to get our driver's license on our 16th birthday. You know, that was like the symbol for people growing up today. They won't get a driver's license. Our grandchildren probably won't get a driver's license because they won't drive. All the cars will be self-driving. Anyway, that's not the purpose of it.
What, did you break a bone in your leg?
Oh, no, I almost tore a tendon.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Vacation.
Yeah, compression bandages are miracles. Whenever I feel anything wrong with me, I think, oh, compression bandage, and I put it on and it's fine. Okay, well,
Are we all here, or are we?
okay, well, why don't we
Okay.
start, because then we won't run out of time.
So, okay, we'll start with a prayer and just a brief meditation. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Bless us and guide us as we try to attune our will with thy great will. Help us offer our hearts, our minds, sincerely to thee, that we might be freed from all delusion. Om. Peace. Amen.
Thank you all for coming, and, oh, yes, please come. And I want to especially thank Shanti, whose idea it was to have just little informal gatherings so we can get to know each other. You know, tonight we'll give a more formal talk, but you don't really get to know each other when somebody's up here talking and you're just sitting. So we wanted to get a chance to meet all of you, and we hope you have questions or thoughts you'd like to share. And as we said, it's very informal. We're some of the actually funnest things to do for people who are teachers is just to answer questions that people have, because it actually draws out answers that you didn't ever think of before. It's not like, I have the answer to that question. It's like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So it's very helpful. And we came down yesterday from Ananda Village. And just to let you know, we're a little bit like strangers in a strange land. We have not left the village since March 2020. And so it was like driving down was, oh, the buildings are so big, and there's so many cars, wow. It was like, I don't know. Big.
So if we seem a little like country bumpkins, it's because we are. And so you just have to put up with it.
So I think we can just, is there anything you want?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that yesterday was Diwali, which is essentially equivalent to Christmas for Indians. It's a very, very important holiday. And most of you know that we have work in Brindaban where we take care of widow mothers. And it's very inspiring.
These are homeless women
Yeah.
who have been widowed and their families have cast them out, and some have lived on the streets for 20 years begging. And so Ananda has started all these both care homes and food subsidies, and we're caring for, I think there's about 100 people living in different care homes, 100 widow mothers, but we also give food to several thousand people. And it's all subsidized by Ananda India.
And we have care workers that the ideal is to help keep them in their own homes, but supplement whatever they need. But what I was going to go on to say is that the widows living in the care homes, they come to Brindaban partly because they've been, in most cases, rejected by their families. There's some superstitions of, if a man dies, usually the wife goes to live with the family of the husband, is typical. And if the husband dies, some families feel that it's superstitious that the wife somehow had negative energy and that's what caused it. Or for financial reasons, they throw them out. So in many cases, they make their way to Brindaban, partly because it's the city of Krishna, and it's as if Krishna will take care of them. And in some ways, that's true. But many of them are deeply, deeply devotional. They spend a lot of time chanting and worshiping. Anyway, to come to the story that I wanted to tell, is that in our care homes, what we try to do is, first of all, of course, care for them, but care for them on many levels, one of which is to get them to serve other people, to help other people, because they're naturally wanting to do that. They're like mothers who've been no longer have a family that they can mother. And so at Diwali time, we order from a manufacturer who has a press, little, they're called diyas. It's the little holder for a candle.
Clay,
for a
little
light.
clay pot.
And it's like a little clay pot. And then those are sent, we get 10,000 of them. And the widow mothers hand paint 10,000 different little diyas, and then they distribute them to people as just free, as a way of service. And so it's a very beautiful thing.
And this year, the woman who's in charge, who's a Kriya Yoga disciple of our path, Jaita, she said because of supply chain blockage, the candles, the little diyas didn't come. And finally it was right before Diwali was coming, and they got a shipment of, I think partial shipment, maybe it was 1,000 in one day. She said the widow mothers stayed up all night, and the 100 of them painted 1,000 little diyas all night to be distributed to the others. And we also, there are a lot of wild animals living on the streets, camels, cows, dogs, monkeys. And part of the service we do is we also feed the animals.
Because the tourists used to come, and then the animals would beg food from them and they would give them. But with the shutdown due to COVID, people aren't traveling to Brindaban, and so the animals were starving.
And, you know, for those of you who know areas of India where there are monkeys, they're not very well behaved. You know, they'll snatch off your glasses or your purse and all these things. But the monkeys, Jeta was telling us, the woman in charge, they line up to get a banana, and they'll give each one a banana, which is very unusual.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, it's just delightful. So happy Diwali, everyone.
Yeah, happy Diwali.
And just imagine that you're receiving a little gift of love, little diya painted by a widow mother. So, questions that anyone would like to ask. And James has a mic. You can take the mic and, yay,
Okay,
Yudhishthira.
Gets it started. Thank you.
Take your mask down when you ask the question, if you would, so it'll come through. And hold it close to your...
We all know the specific effects of COVID on our lives and on our different communities. Can you look ahead and see any long-term changes to Ananda's growth or progress or outreach as a result of the changes that have occurred because of COVID?
How long do you have?
Yeah, many. COVID for Ananda has been the best of times and the worst of times. Worst of times in the sense that it has separated us. You all have experienced this is just the beginning of gathering together in person here in the temple. And so that part has been taken away from us. On the other hand, the best of times, probably the number of people that the community here or the work here is serving has doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and that's true all around the world, that Ananda's work is 3 or 4 times as big as it was.
Through online, we're speaking.
Through online classes. And just as an example, you know, for many years we've had a course of training online so that, same as you have here, you learn to meditate and then you can take Raja Yoga and then discipleship and preparation for Kriya and finally Kriya. In our How to Meditate courses, 3 years ago, we might get 35, 40 people online. This is from around the world. And we would do that 3 times a year. Now we get like 200 people and we do it every 2 months. And so that huge explosion of people and hungry to receive the teachings, really wanting and really engaging. So, coming to your question, we will never ever go back to just people coming to a location in order to receive the teachings. So it'll move to a hybrid where it'll be online and in person. And everybody, you guys here, will have to work out how that works. You know, some things will be online. A lot of things will be in person and streamed at the same time, so people can choose. But that's going to change. I think COVID is also likely to change a lot of things in society. You know, we're now dealing with, the disease, but the disease itself is going to pass. And we're still in the epidemic, or the...
Contagious.
Yeah, the epidemic.
Endemic.
Endemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it will become kind of like flu. You know, it'll be around, but we will have learned how to cope, and it'll be kind of get to a stable, relatively stable level, not like what we've seen now. But the effects on society, the separation, the anxieties, the polarity, the arguing and the fighting, those effects are going to last for a long time. It'll be political, it will be in terms of trust and distrust of systems and governments and science and all kinds of things like that. So it's like there's been a big disruption in society. Now what we have to, as yogis and as people on this path, we have to look at that in terms of the long-range movement into Dwapara Yuga. And so what Swami said was that the energy of Dwapara Yuga, it's like as you move from Kali Yuga to Dwapara Yuga, the energy level goes up an octave, but the consciousness does not go up the octave at the same time. And so that energy is animating Kali Yuga consciousness, and we're going to deal with the effects of that probably for the rest of our lifetime, for most of us sitting here. We will also deal with economic aspects. But for Ananda, because why has this happened to the world? Because the world is resisting a spiritual change that it needs to make, and therefore we're being forced to make that change through the disruption of societal norms, one might say. But we as devotees are already have made the changes or are moving in that direction. So our lives are not going to be greatly disrupted, but because we are, let's say we're 20 years, or actually I think we're a yuga ahead of the curve. But in terms of now, let's say that we're 20 years or 10 years ahead of where society is. Society is going to begin to look at the solutions that we have that they used to say, we don't need that. I got this job, I got a successful career, I've got everything going. Why, as Swami put it in his humorous way in the play, Jewel in the Lotus. Why would you want to become a devotee? That's for when you're old and have nothing better to do. So society is going to look for solutions to these really life disrupting problems. And the spiritual path, and especially the spiritual path and communities that Ananda represent, are the solutions to that. So I think that what we have to offer is going to become more sought for and more palatable to a wider range of people. And the technology is such that we can help do that. That doesn't mean that we won't be affected ourselves, but we won't be affected in the same way as society will. So a lot of changes, and I don't think it'll normalize in our lifetime.
Most of you know, in 1976, there was a forest fire that burnt the Ananda village down to the ground. And when the smoke blew away and the ashes settled, we realized, you know what, we can build this community better. Because the first iteration was not planned. It was just sort of random, I'll build a house here and build a house there. And after the field was leveled, literally, we said, we need to plan this community. And Jyotish and I and others in the team, were part of the master plan development that has evolved over the years to build a well-planned community based on good land use and conscious development. Well, so it is now. In a way, our lives have been disrupted and leveled, and what was before does not exist. But now, Master said that time to sow the seeds of success are in the season of failure. Well, it's not failure, but it's fallow. Everything we knew and kind of based our life on is not the same anymore. So we can begin saying, what do I really want to do with my life? What's important? Chandra was saying before you all came in, she said, COVID's been really a great thing. She said, I've spent a lot of time inwardly and kind of to myself and figuring out what's important. And then I could relate to people more, at a distance and gradually. But an example, we'd run the Expanding Light or the meditation retreat since the beginning of Ananda, 1969. And then it was shut down with COVID. And then we said, you know what? We've done it in a way, we could do it better. And it wasn't until we shut it down that we had the time and space to say, what do we really want to be happening here? We brought in a whole new crew to lead it, all young people, wonderful, dynamic young people with vision and creativity. And when it's starting to open up now, we had our first weekend 2 weeks ago. We have a big weekend this weekend. And I think a group of you all are coming too, I understand Shanti was telling me, which is fabulous. But we're rethinking it. So it's a time of rebirth. The old forms are gone. And let's look at our own lives as individuals, because Jyotish and I have been pretty isolated, but we've had more time in sadhana, we've had more time to do creative writing, and just be centered in yourself. And so now how do we want to express the changes outwardly? Well, it's a process. I can't give you the quick answer, but every one of us, I think, who do I want to be post-pandemic? I had certain behavior patterns, sadhana patterns, thought patterns. Maybe I can change those now. Maybe I don't have to bring those into the future. So it's really a wonderful opportunity. And, how does progress happen? It isn't like you just keep adding on to the old. It doesn't work that way. It's, like the Tesla car we were talking about. It's just a new vision of how to do it. And I remember the first time I got in a Tesla, a friend of ours had one and picked us up from the airport. And we had our bags, and she said, oh, well, the trunk's pretty full. Put them in the frunk. And I said, the what? And she flipped open the front part of the car, and, nothing.
No engine.
And I thought, oh my God, this is a different model altogether. And it really was mind-changing. And so really, I think, let's use this time to let new thought forms come of how we can live our lives, how we can serve, how we used the restrooms in the yoga studio. Oh, it's gorgeous,
Yeah.
beautiful vibration in there. But how can we do it better and different? And we've been forced into it, and now let's say, maybe this is a good thing, not just constraint. We were laughing because, thank you all for wearing masks. We shared this with the previous group, but the choir at Ananda Village is starting to have rehearsals for the first time, but there are special singing masks that you can wear. And so someone put on a chat room for Ananda, they said, singing masks? You mean the masks do the singing? You just put them on, and here, you put on the alto mask, you put on the tenor mask, and just the sing. So anyway, it's been fun. It's really, and as Jyotish was saying, and I'll close, and then whoever has the next question, get ready and be jumping up and down in your seat. Ooh, me.
We went to a ballet with our then 3-year-old granddaughter.
The Nutcracker.
Nutcracker, and all the little kids were up there dancing the Sugar Plum Fairies. And she got so excited, she started bouncing up and down in her seat, saying, when is it my turn, Grandma? When is it my turn? So whoever's next, when is it my turn?
Okay. So anyway,
Lee.
Oh, we've probably known Lee longer than any of you. We met Lee in 1979? Yeah.
1980.
80.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, was it? Very nice.
Hello?
It's on.
Okay. Almost all my questions were answered in the context of this last question, but just want to segue. A few months ago, you sent a message in your weekly report, and I was gratified to hear it addressing the QAnon conspiracy, since we don't usually have ministers make anything like a political or social commentary comment in our tradition, and address that some Ananda people had been influenced by the QAnon conspiracy, and that we disavow it. And then reading, as one does, to find out more about this, as I was kind of just learning about this last year, that apparently many members of the yoga community and alternative health community have been influenced by the social media and the isolation of the COVID experience, and were amongst a high percentage of people who had fallen for these conspiracies and anti-vaccine conspiracies. And it's been hard for me not to have a growing anger and exasperation about this situation, and kind of concerns about where it's going to lead in the future for our country as a whole. So, any thoughts about that?
Good question,
Yeah. Well, this is a very tricky subject, because first of all, you have to accept that people come from different starting points. And there's a tendency to say, I've come to a conclusion, that's the only right conclusion. Anybody who doesn't share my view is not only wrong, but in some cases crazy, you know. But you can't really honestly hold that position. Depending on a person's leaning, if they start from a certain point, they'll follow the breadcrumbs of that position, and they will arrive at a conclusion. But they may have done as much research as you have to arrive at your conclusion. And so to say, oh, they're just mindless idiots to do that is not right. Having said that, there's partly to blame is the media and the world that we live in. Part of early Dwapara Yuga is that we have changed from a system whereby we accepted the evaluation and the teaching of experts in a field, to now there are 10,000 opinions that you can get online. And so somebody who has a leaning in a certain direction will be online, and they will follow the breadcrumbs, and they will have lots and lots of information and reinforcement for the way that they're leaning in the first place. And part of the problem of the world that we live in is to be laid at the feet of the media, that it selectively pushes people to go to the next step in whatever their belief system is. So if they begin to believe in a conspiracy theory, whether it's right or wrong, the information that they will get supports that, but then offers them the next step in that. So let me take a neutral example, because vaccine and politics is not neutral. But let's take, nobody here, I assume, is part of the Flat Earth Society. But if you were part of a Flat Earth Society, you would start getting news feeds that support that position, and furthermore, you would start getting news feeds that will turn you toward experts. So you'd start getting a news feed from a geologist who has spent their life studying geology and now finally understands that the Earth really is flat. And so
Jyotish is giving away one of our beliefs, actually.
yeah, right. And so that's part of this whole dilemma, is part of the difficult learning process that we're going through. When you're offered 1,001 apparently valid options of what's true, how do you discriminate between that? And therefore, I don't think you can find what you're looking for in the news media or online. I think you have to detach from that and go to somebody who has disengaged from that whole mindset. That's why our teachings are so incredibly valuable, because Master and Swami offer a whole alternative viewpoint of what the universe is about. We'll talk tonight, because we're going to give this talk on energy and so on. But, you know, what we see is not reality. We think it's reality, but it's not reality. And yogis gradually learn that our senses lie to us. Well, if our senses lie to us, my God, the internet lies in much more persuasive ways. And so this whole thing, basically you just have to calm yourself, get centered, get detached, and let people believe what they believe. Don't get all tied up in knots about other people's opinions, but go deeper into what you feel is right, but in a higher consciousness. Not right in terms of, I'm going to really argue with this person and I've got this argument, because honestly, part of the problem with conspiracy theories is that they detach from logic, and therefore they don't have to deal with a logical argument, because then every logical argument is done by one of the conspirators who is feeding false information. And so we'll never convince people by logic who hold, frankly, any differing viewpoints, not even to speak of conspiracy. So get centered in yourself, get into your own practice, work on getting your own consciousness higher, and don't worry so much about what other people are doing. The world is going to go through some difficult times, but you are not going to cure that. And all you're going to do is upset yourself if you get too deeply involved with it.
Yeah, as Jyotish was speaking, I was looking at the quotes from Master's poem, Samadhi, and it answers it. Past, present, future, no more for me, but ever present, all flowing I everywhere. And so we're living, and then the other one too, the storm of Maya, stilled by magic wand of intuition deep. You know, we're living in a Mayic storm right now, very intense. We'll let you speak in a moment. But, you know, Jyotish spoke of the internet, but really what we're living in now, over and above COVID, over and above political opinions, over above conspiracy theories, is the clash between consciousness, expansive consciousness of Dwapara Yuga, contractive consciousness of Kali Yuga. And they're at war with each other. And they're finding reasons or labels to hang those different approaches on. You know, contraction or expansion. And it's a fight of light and darkness right now. And how do we participate in it? Go within, feel God's light within, and live in that light. We're not going to convince people, and we shouldn't try, really. People have the right to their own opinions, truly. The reason we wrote that, because the person was posting on an Ananda website about QAnon. We thought, no, we can't let people think that Ananda is
people were writing us saying, is QAnon Ananda's official position?
Yeah, so we had to
and
post
so we had to, otherwise, if it had been private,
right.
let the person
But
have their own opinion.
But really, we need to understand it's bigger than any of the events, an election or a pandemic. It's consciousness. It's movements of consciousness. And that's why, in answer to Yudhishthira's question, how is it will change, if we can ride the wave of expanding consciousness, we'll help all of society, much more than arguing about this position or that position. Because people are, even if you scrape away all the specifics, why do people go into conspiracy theory? They don't want to be limited by what other people tell them, which is okay. It's actually a good thing. You should experience it for yourself and form your own opinions, but in alignment with truth. That's the caveat. So really, it's a challenging time, but it's a time so filled with the potential for blessings and growth and service to others. We were talking yesterday with Helen, who is the administrator of the school, and she said sometimes the students and parents who have graduated already from the school, they just like to come back and be on the grounds and sit, because they feel the vibration. This is what we can do now, just to create. And in the earlier little group session we had, someone asked a question about how you help people who are dying. And we said, just sit in the light with them. And whether someone's dying or not, if it's a coworker who's struggling, a family member who's unhappy, you have to go beyond the mind and just share the light, share the divine love. And as disciples in Kriya bonds, we can do that. Mm-hmm. We have so much more than we realize. One of our wonderful teachers on our online programs from Ananda Online at Ananda Village, he teaches the meditation, beginning meditation, and then discipleship, Sagar. And he got the most beautiful letter. The letters and testimonials we get from people all over the world are extraordinary. But he got a letter from a man who was taking discipleship. Hi, Lakshmi, nice to see you. Who said, I've studied these teachings elsewhere, Yogananda, presumably SRF, he didn't say that. But he said, what I found with Ananda were true spiritual friends. And he said, I can't tell you what that means to have that level of support and genuine caring about my spiritual development. And that's really transcending conspiracies that this person thinks that and that person thinks that. This will all pass. But what we want to bring through it is the light and the desire to be of help to others. Now you wanted to share.
I just want to say one more thing, then you're out. So jump up, down in your seat, say, when is it my turn? It is the job of Maya to distract us. That's its purpose. And we're going to talk about this on Sunday in this Sunday service, but Krishna says when we sit to meditate, when the mind becomes distracted, the yogi has to resolutely let go of that distraction and bring the mind back. Life is like that. Maya is going to try to distract us. And as yogis, we need to resolutely not get distracted, not get into that level of fighting and anger and upset and all of that. It's just a distraction. But to come back to our spiritual practice and our desire for God. And so our choice needs to always bring the needle, as Master said in his beautiful poem, God, God, God. The spotlight of my mind ever keeps turning on God, God, God. So all those distractions, that's Maya's job, is to get our spotlight turned toward this little scuffle and that little argument. Our job is to keep that spotlight constantly coming back to God, God, God. And everything else is just stuff. Now, please.
I don't know your name. Can you say?
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah. My name is Vani.
Vani, oh, nice.
Yeah. And I'm a fairly new Kriyaban. It's 2 years. But I had read the book, Master's book, several years back, but I was in Chicago, London, didn't know where to. But anyway, it took me some time. But while as I'm hearing through this with the COVID, I did struggle in the first 6 months of it because I wanted to know when it would be over. Because I'm sort of used to have clear-cut answers, because even for myself and from others. So that was the tough one. But once I got over that, I looked at it as it helped me personally, because I wasn't so regular at my sadhana before, even after. I was trying,
Right.
but always found. But at least now I feel anytime I go off the path, somehow Master helps me to get back on, and I've been pretty good recently. The thing that I wanted to ask you, though, what I'm struggling with is more like, how do I know whether I'm making progress on my spiritual path or not? And in the sense of, because first of all, I feel that I shouldn't say started too late, because I did grow up with some spiritual in families with certain things from Gita and the whole thing. It was like, not that new to me, but not so much thinking I was in more of a profession of, engineering and all that kind of stuff. So it made it harder. So there are times when I feel, oh my God, I'm so old already. In this life, I don't think I will make so much progress. No, I'm just, that's why I wanted to hear some things from you folks. And then I'm like, okay, then when I reborn, do I start all over this again? And that bothers me sometimes.
Okay.
So I just wanted to hear from you
Okay.
as to what you think about it.
Okay,
Very
Vani.
good.
Should I start?
If you want.
Okay.
You seem to want.
First of all, thank you for being so open and honest. First of all, in the group before, there was a man sitting right there, actually, right where you're sitting, who said the same thing. I'm a new Kriyaban. And he was sort of apologetic about it. We need to understand anybody who gets Kriya, this is not their first lifetime on the path. Kriya is the highest technique, Master says in Autobiography, for self-realization ever given to man. You and all of you who have Kriya have had lifetimes being devotees, following spiritual discipline, to have the blessing of receiving Kriya. Remember that. You're not new. You are a very old devotee, and I don't mean age, I mean lifetimes. You have had that. To answer the last part of your question, it says very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna, what if I make the effort and I don't find God? Is all my effort lost? He said, no. He said, you will pick up where you have left off in the last lifetime. No effort is lost on the spiritual path. So however far you go, then you continue on. But how do you know if you're making spiritual progress? It's a question we all ask. I remember one time, I'd been on the path, when we say, I always feel reluctant to say this, because we've been on the path a long time, and I don't want people to get discouraged. But to think, oh, well, God, they've been on so long, and I'm just starting. But I was probably 30 years into it, and we were riding in the car with Swamiji, and we were talking about people's spiritual growth. He was talking about different people, and I couldn't help it. I just said, I don't see that I've changed so much. And he got the energy rose, and he said, how can you say that? You're a totally different person than when you first came. I couldn't see it. I felt like the same old me with the same old issues. We can't tell, that's the point. And that's where the guru-disciple comes in, where you just say, Master, however far I get, I will keep doing this. There's a beautiful story that Swami used to tell of this young man that comes to the guru's ashram. And the guru gives him diksha, initiation, and then he said, I want you to go into the forest outside the ashram and collect firewood. And and for the ashram ovens so we can cook and so forth. And the man does this for time goes by, and then one day he's carrying the firewood back to the ashram, and one of the logs starts to fall, and it catches on his hair, and it pulls out a lock of his hair, and he looks and realizes that his hair has turned gray, like some other people. And he starts to cry, and he said, I came to my guru's ashram as a young boy, and here I am, an older man, and I haven't found God. And the tears start to fall. And the guru comes rushing out of his little hut, and he captures the tear. And he said, don't you know that the tear of such a great soul as you, if it touches the ground, there will be 7 years of famine? And he just touches him, and he goes into ecstasy, goes into union with God. So the point is, we can't tell. Our job is just to keep offering everything we do to Guru and saying, if I go deep in meditation, if I gain benefit from Kriya, that's in your hands, Master. What's in my hands is the willingness to keep trying. That's all we can do.
Also, if you've been an engineer, is that what I understand? Your occupation has trained you to measure things and to evaluate according to measurements. And that's not really possible on the spiritual path. There isn't an easy external measurement that can be made. Reminds me years ago, one of the best things I was a runner, I still am, but one of the best pieces of advice that I ever read about running was somebody asked, how much effort should I make when I'm running? And the person answering didn't say, oh, your pulse should be at this level or your pace should be at this level. The answer was, if it feels like an effort, it's an effort. And so I give you that for your spiritual evaluation. If it feels like you're making an effort, if you're sincere in that, then you're on the right path and you're growing because of that. And if you look for some outside sign, I'm at 82.68% of the effort that I'm, it's just not going to be there. So just keep making a sincere effort. Don't get caught up in thinking that, I'm not making 100% effort. Nobody can run at 100% effort for any length of time. Just keep on, keeping on, and accept the fact, as Krishna says, that whatever you do in any lifetime will accumulate and accrue. If you have a next birth, it'll accrue to the next birth. And in this lifetime, if you hadn't accrued a lot of the energy of a spiritually sincere person, you wouldn't have gotten Kriya.
And one final thought, just 1 second, real briefly. Guru Kripa, Guru's grace. Ultimately, that's all we have going for us. By our own efforts, we can't do it. But Guru Kripa. Okay.
Hi, thank you for being here. It's great to be with you guys.
Coming.
So my question is, how do you...
Tell us your name, please.
Miriam.
Miriam. Okay.
Yes, my question is, how do you address people that mean well, that give you advice without being asked, even if they're spiritual family or birth family?
Okay.
Master had a charming story about a man who was famous for criticizing people and essentially kind of reducing them to little whimpering, pulverized egos. And so this person came to Master and started criticizing him about what he did and how he was a fake and how he was a hypocrite. And Master didn't argue back. And he didn't say, "You're right." He said, "You may be right." And the man would try another barb, and Master would say, "You may be right." And finally, this went on for an hour, and finally the critic gave up and said, "You're the only person who's ever defeated me." Because he couldn't get his goat. That was the whole purpose of what he was doing, was to get somebody's goat, and Master just wouldn't let him do it. Then Master said, then when he was finally done, then I really gave it to him. Because finally he had admitted that he was at fault in acting this way. So Master said, I really gave it to him. I said, why do you do that kind of thing? Why do you try to hurt other people? You're only hurting yourself by... So anyway, with your relatives or with other people who are trying to give you their opinions or force their views on you, whether you say it out loud or not, don't fight back. Just in your mind, say, you may be right, but what Master was saying is, I know a higher truth, but you aren't ready to hear it yet. So don't argue back, just say you may be right, but act in that way. Act respectfully, but don't try to fight back with them, but don't let them sway you or your own opinion of what you know to be right for yourself. And then if you do that and you remain calm and loving, it's like a person wanting to play ping pong. If you never hit the ball back to them, pretty soon they give up.
And that little phrase, you may be right, is very, very useful for those of you who are in a relationship or a partnership of any kind.
Davey and I use it all the time.
Right, like, I think we should do this. You may be right. You may be right. And it really neutralizes things. But when people give you advice, I don't know the percentage, but some of the time they'll be right, not all the time. And so then it's up to you, if somebody gives you advice, to take it inside. I mean, sometimes we can just say, I'm not going there, I'm not even going to consider that, even if, inwardly you can think that. But sometimes there's a point to it and we don't want to hear it. And, like sometimes your good friends will say, will say something to you and you don't want to hear it because your ego gets defensive. But it's good to consider it. Some of you may know the story I had. It was very funny. I had a number of years ago, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was arguing with a person I knew who lived at Ananda Village. And of course, it was my dream. I was right. And they were wrong. And then a third person, another woman who lives at Ananda Village, walked by. And she just very sweetly said, Davy, you're not always right. And I had this huge reaction in my dream. I thought, well, hey, it's my dream. I can be right in my own dream. But it's not our dream, it's God's dream. And we're not always right. And so just to have the openness to say, maybe God's speaking to me through that person. Swamiji was amazing in that way. Sometimes, like one time this person, he did not know, flew all the way from New York to California, came to Ananda Village to tell him something that he needed to do. And we didn't even we didn't know who this person was.
Seemed like a crazy person.
It seemed like a crazy person. But Swami listened very respectfully. And when the person left, he said, I think that person was a channel for Master telling me something.
Most of what he said was nonsense. But one thing that he said, I have to pay attention to.
Yeah. So, God can tell us things that through unexpected channels, And we need to be open and just say, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow, I'm here to transcend any limitations of thought or reactions. And, if someone gives me advice, I don't have to follow it, but I'll think about it. And then if you feel like, no, this isn't something I need to work on, you let it go.
Sometimes with families, that's harder to do.
Yeah, because they
But
watch.
So be respectful and then lead your own life.
Hi.
Hi. Who are you?
Oh,
We've seen you somewhere.
you know, around here and there.
We're teasing him because
We see him all over the place.
wherever
we
we're
see him
giving
in the
us,
CC, we see him at the village.
we see him, yeah, and we never know when he's going to appear.
Well, I just follow you guys around, so. So I had a question based on something you just said actually, which was, you know, in trying to tune into the energy of a situation or the energy of the times that we're in now, moving forward, you know, how do we, you know, pick a direction that's going to be in the best interest of everyone, while still holding, you know, understanding that what we feel is really true, and more in the sense of like choosing to engage in a new endeavor. You know, like when you guys, like to come here, what was the process of tuning into that decision to move forward with going back out, to meeting people, to, you know, how do you guys relate that to your own personal experience and what you feel you need, and then the whole and the world and everything?
That's a good question. By the way, personally, how's your mother doing?
She's okay. Yeah, we're going to be moving her to a new living situation soon. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, making decisions is a real art form, and there are several tools that you have. One, you have logic and the mind, so you look at the circumstances and situations. The best way is to make them intuitively if you can, but intuition isn't always open, but you can develop it. But you just need to try. The most important thing of all is to have the desire to do the right thing. If you have the desire to do the right thing, then that desire will gradually lead you to actually doing the right thing, which you may not at the beginning. The bigger problem is having a fixed sense of this is my opinion, that's what I'm going to do, period. So coming to how did we make the decision to come, how did we do it at this time? Partly it was logical, it was we tune in to a lot of information from our community doctor, Dr. Peter, who is really deeply involved in studying about the virus, all the aspects of it. We have regular meetings. We've had like 60 sessions of at least an hour where he's been talking to us.
75 sessions.
75 about COVID and all aspects of it. So we have a good basic fundamental knowledge. And then from that, we have to feel what's the risk, what's the benefit of coming. You know, we were invited to go to LA. We were supposed to go, I think, in September.
Yes.
But the number of cases were still too high, so we decided not to go. But now we've peaked, we're coming down, and it seemed like the benefit of coming here outweighed the risk, plus Shanti guaranteed as a doctor that we would be fine if we came. So trusting Shanti, we decided, well, if we have it from a higher source, then okay. But no, I'm teasing a little bit, but you know, we did the best thing, but honestly, it came down to an intuitional feeling. It feels like the right thing to do. And so we did it. Now we have a question coming up. We're hoping to go to India in February. It would be very good if we can make that trip. So the benefit of making that trip is high. But we have to feel, both with logic and the best we can with the information, but we have to go inside and feel, really ask Master, is this right to do? Now I'll tell a little story about that. Many years ago, this was like 1994 or something like that, I don't know. We were in Assisi, we were scheduled to make a trip to Russia. And just at the time that we were
When we say make a trip, we're invited by devotees to do programs. So it isn't just like we're going to Russia.
And
we had a center in Moscow.
Right,
we do still have a center
right.
in Moscow.
And they had programs set up for us and a whole schedule. Well, just about a week or 10 days before we were scheduled to go, the Russian economy collapsed and the ruble collapsed. And we were watching CNN, and there were long lines of people at the bank trying to get their last savings out before it was all taken away, and chaos on the streets and all of that. And watching the news sources, coming back to Lee's question, it looked like the country was completely in chaos. Well, we were hearing from our friends, things are fine. Come on, please.
We've set it all up.
Yeah, we've set it all up, so you really need to come. We were trying to weigh all of this, and in the meantime, we were there, and Swami was watching all of this, and he was saying to us, I don't know. It looks like
sure
things,
you want to go?
Are you sure you want to go? Boy, things look terrible there. And this went on for, finally about 3 days ahead of time. We said, Swami, they're counting on us. We just have to go. And we made our decision. He said, well, of course you have to go.
Yeah, he kept saying, are you sure you want to go? Are you sure you want to go?
Yeah.
He's just wanting us to affirm.
Yeah, and wanting us to use our own intuition, to come to the right decision, tuning in to Master and to higher things. And then, of course, when we opted, he said, well, of course you have to.
You've made a commitment. They're expecting
you made a commitment. You have to. But he didn't.
And it all turned out wonderfully.
All turned out just great, and there were no rioting on the streets, and it was all just the news stuff. I saw one time we were here in Palo Alto, and there was a big windstorm. And so they were showing that on the news. The fact that we happened to be here, and we saw that there were a few streets where a limb had fallen down, and so we watched on the news, and the whole of Palo Alto had been destroyed. Every street had trees fallen on it and cars smashed. And being here and seeing what was going on, we saw that there were a half a dozen limbs down and 2 cars had been damaged. And that's all the news reported. So you just have to get centered and make the best decision that you can. But don't trust news sources to be the source of truth.
But it was we were running out of time. But it was the trip to Moscow was actually very interesting. We flew on Aeroflot, which was the state airlines at that time, and the seats were not. They were like these wooden chairs that were not attached to the.
Not completely bolted down.
So they were like sliding like this, and then, but the people were so kind, and they were just trying to make it. So like for breakfast, this one man, it was freezing there, it was late fall, he brought us like ice cream bars for breakfast. So we thought, oh, thank you. And then finally they were driving us to the airport, and they didn't speak much English. We always had a translator with us, but the man who was driving, the passenger who was with him, had a little translating English-Russian translation book, and he looked at us and goes, more stove, please? And and he was asking us if we wanted to turn up the heat. I said, yes, more stove, please, more stove, please. Anyway, we had a wonderful time.
Yeah, wonderful time. But try to do your duty as you see it. Make that the default position. Do the right thing, do your duty as you see it. And then if circumstances seem clearly to indicate a different choice, then pay attention to that. But opt to stay in tune, opt to serve God, opt to live according to your highest ideals, and the rest will take care of itself.
And when we were pulling out of the village, we stopped and we just asked Master for his protection. And then I thought, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Okay, well maybe, Shanti, I think okay, Sneha. No, we go on. One more question. You've been patiently waiting. So take your Master when you ask.
I came to Ananda the year that Swami passed away. And of course, I've seen a lot of videos, read his books. I'm curious to hear, how do you keep Swami and Master alive in your life? And how might we keep Master and Swami alive in our lives?
It's a nice way to end.
I think, in part, I think about Master and Swami many times every day. It's because we've internalized it. It's not so much external, although that too, for instance, we were saying on the way down yesterday, we listened, most of the time was spent listening to a talk by Swami. We could have had many other options, but staying in that vibration. So many times every day, I do something to try to stay in the vibration of Master and Swami. But mostly now it's internal things as opposed to, I will often, with a little question or decision, like what Sterling's asking, I will just mentally kind of refer, Master, what's the right thing? Or Swami, what would you do? That kind of thing. So the reference point for my mind and heart keeps coming back to that. And that keeps their living presence very, very much alive. So each person needs to do that in their own way. But I would say the whole of the answer of this is to keep the needle of your heart and your mind ever pointed toward God and Guru.
Yeah. I'll just add briefly, just always have Master and Swami as your points of reference. And how do you do that? Well, read what they've written, listen to their talks. And very often, like a question will come, should we make this trip or not? We hold it up, Swami, what would you do? And we knew he would say, you have to make that trip, you've committed to it. But just, very often, like I'll ask, what would you do? And then something he wrote in one of his books will come real clear in my mind, or something Master had said. So they're always, we need to appreciate that they're wanting to help us. They're wanting to show us the way. We just have to genuinely ask. And Swami also said, with developing intuition, if you ask and get an intuitive reply, and then you don't follow through, you won't receive that guidance so strongly the next time. So if you feel, yeah, it's the right thing to do, and then you do it, then you build, it's like developing a friendship with someone where you pick up the subtle cues, you can tell if the person's a little bit sad or something's wrong or they're upset, whatever. And it's the same with the Guru, you just, am I pleasing you? And if you feel, then you're not doing the right thing. But if you feel, yeah, you're right. So it's really, it's developing the deepest friendship you'll ever have with any human being. That's what the Guru is. Swami has a beautiful essay in Religion in the New Age called Why I Love My Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda. And the very last few sentences are, I'll try to quote it as accurately as I can. He said, when I am wrong, I feel that he wants to help me to break through delusion. When I am right, I feel his smile in my heart. In every test, I feel he is on my side. Every test of delusion, I feel he is on my side. Can anyone be a better friend than that? So the Guru is our dearest, highest friend. We just have to trust and ask and be open to how much they're trying to help us all the time. So
Maybe to bring it full circle with the question Lee asked, if you look for guidance from sources that are steeped in Maya, they will take you down the rabbit hole deeper and deeper and deeper. If you ask for guidance from God and Guru, they'll take you out of that rabbit hole step by step by step. So make your own choice.
okay, well, we have little Diwali prasad for everybody.